Oh no! What is this?
In my worn-out state right after giving birth, I screamed while clutching my phone. After 2 years of marriage, we finally had our child. I had eagerly awaited celebrating the birth with my beloved husband. However, he vanished without a trace just before the delivery. Even when the labor started, I couldn't reach him, and he never showed up at the hospital, even after our daughter let out her first cry. To make matters worse, I received a message from him saying, "I'm tired of living.
Please, don't do anything rash."
All I could do was pray for his safety, but my husband never returned. And then, 25 years later, I would come to learn the truth in an unexpected way. I, Kathy, got married at 26. My husband, Steve, was 28. We sometimes argued, but that was proof that we were doing well as a couple. We clashed because we cared about each other, and at least I believed that we were supporting each other well. However, 2 years after our marriage, our relationship began to take a turn for the worse. "Hey, these shoes weren't here before, right? Did you buy something new again?" Steve replied.
So what? It's my money. I can do what I want with it.
"You say that, but you've already spent quite a bit." When I pointed out the new brand name shoes at the entrance, Steve frowned in annoyance and turned away. In truth, Steve had always been a bit loose with money since we started dating. After we got married, we agreed that I would manage all the bank accounts because leaving it to him meant we never had any savings. Despite this, at that time, brand name shoes and sneakers were increasing in our house. When I asked where the money was coming from, he would always evade, saying things like, "I made it from stocks," or "I won at the slot machines." I was worried he might be borrowing from somewhere, but I couldn't confront him strongly. Alongside the growing collection of brand name items, there was another thing that bothered me. Steve muttered in a low voice.
You're always restricting me. Don't you trust me at all?
Maybe he was fed up with my suspicious gaze. He slouched and disappeared into the bedroom. Seeing him so dejected made my chest ache. What concerned me was the gloomy expression he sometimes showed. The Steve I knew would have been irritated and rebellious towards me, but at that time, he didn't show any of those signs. I'm not satisfied with the money situation, but I'm a bit worried about Steve's attitude. Maybe he was troubled by something at work. Was he shopping to relieve stress? That thought crossed my mind, and I couldn't say more than small complaints. And then, amidst my already existing anxiety, an event occurred that escalated my husband's strange behavior. It happened when I found out I was pregnant. We had talked about wanting children since the early days of our marriage, so I was over the moon.
"Hey, the baby is finally coming."
Huh? Oh, yeah. That's great.
However, Steve averted his eyes from me with a distant attitude. From that point on, Steve started going out more, almost as if he was avoiding me. Not only on days off, but even on weekdays, he wouldn't come home until late at night. Eventually, his excuses for business trips and travels increased, and he started staying out overnight more often. "Hey, I understand work is tough, but could you come home a bit earlier? I'm feeling anxious about the first childbirth." But even when I pointed it out, he didn't respond, dismissing it as business dinner or can't hang out with friends once the baby is born. Steve seemed positive about having a child before, but does he realize what it means to be a father? Naturally, I still felt uneasy about this, but it was a fact that once the baby was born, we wouldn't have much time together, so his words made sense. Above all, I was concerned about Steve's persistently gloomy mood, but without confronting him directly, I could only observe quietly. However, delaying addressing the issue was a mistake. As the due date approached, an incident finally occurred. It was late at night on a day when I was in my last month of pregnancy, and I was asleep. Suddenly, my stomach began to ache, and I woke up. Labor had started. I need to contact Steve. It hurts. As usual, I sent a text to my husband, who wasn't at home, but there was no response. So, I went to the hospital alone in a taxi. From then on, I was solely focused on giving birth, and although I don't remember much, my efforts paid off, and a healthy baby girl was born safely. However, our joy over our child's birth was short-lived. Both sets of parents, with serious expressions, rushed to the hospital. And then, they told me that they couldn't reach Steve. From then on, the mood shifted dramatically, and we began to search for my husband with unsettled feelings. Despite my postpartum condition, I contacted our mutual friends and his workplace. But no one knew where he was, and to my surprise, his workplace reported that Steve had already resigned days ago. I didn't hear anything about that. What's going on? What's happening? Amidst the confusion, a notification popped up on my tightly held phone. When I looked, it was none other than a message from Steve. Feeling relieved that there was some response, I opened the message, but my relief turned into shock when I read its contents. I've been thinking for a while, but I'm not qualified to raise a child as pathetic as me. Living has become unbearable. Please don't look for me. That's what it said. My in-laws screamed at the ominous message. As for me, I couldn't believe it, staring at the screen of my phone in disbelief. Certainly, there were times when he seemed strange, but I never imagined he was feeling so cornered.
What is this? Please, don't do anything rash.
But my plea was in vain, and my husband never returned. Moreover, as a result of reporting to the police, his shoes were found lined up on a nearby cliff. This led the police to suspect suicide, and the investigation continued, but his body was never found, and eventually, the search was called off. Thus, my husband left us, leaving behind only our beloved daughter, disappearing before our eyes. Why? Why didn't I listen to him more? For a while, consumed by regret and guilt, I couldn't do anything but cry. However, I couldn't continue like that forever. A few months after the incident, I somehow started working to raise my daughter. Despite not giving up on Steve and frequently gathering information, there was no progress. Balancing childcare and work was tough, but to ensure we never lose our family again, I poured all my love into my daughter as much as possible. And so, amidst the busy days, I realized that a whopping 25 years had passed since my husband had disappeared. At 53 years old, I was living with my 25-year-old daughter, Emily, who had grown up beautifully despite being raised in a single-parent household. To contribute to the household, Emily started her singing career in her teens and transitioned into acting, becoming quite a success in the industry. Thanks to her, we never faced financial difficulties, and we enjoyed a happy life together. However, secretly, I still harbored feelings for my husband. If the three of us, Emily, Steve, and I, could have lived together, how happy would we have been? Despite feeling conflicted, I didn't want to burden my daughter with unnecessary expectations, so I simply told her that her father had passed away. Yet, the despair from when my husband disappeared had certainly lingered in my heart. However, one day, Emily confided in me with a serious expression that she wanted to introduce someone important to her. Listening closely to the unusual atmosphere, it turned out that Emily was considering marriage with an actor from her generation, Will. Furthermore, his mother happened to be the president of a talent agency. While I couldn't deny feeling surprised, I enthusiastically nodded along with my daughter's earnest words. If he's the one you've chosen, I'll support you. No matter who he is. Given that she was a celebrity marrying an actor, I could easily anticipate the public's reaction and the challenges ahead. Nonetheless, after what happened with my husband, I had firmly resolved to stand by my daughter no matter what. Moreover, there was no reason to oppose her marriage, especially considering how excitedly she shared the news despite her nervousness. Relieved by my response, Emily showed me a photo of his family on her phone and expressed her desire for us to meet. However, at that moment, Is this? I gasped as I looked at the photo that had caught my eye. And the unbelievable scene captured in that photo would drastically change my life. 2 weeks later, I was heading to the meeting place with Emily for the introduction. We were both probably wearing more stern expressions than usual. While nerves were certainly a factor, there was another significant reason for our seriousness. If our suspicions are correct, we can't just let this go. But could this be some kind of mistake? With these tumultuous emotions in my heart, I stepped into the restaurant designated as the venue. As it was a meeting between celebrities, we were ushered into a private room with strict privacy measures. And when the waiter opened the door, I was met with the sight of a certain person. At that moment, the complex emotions that had been building up inside me overflowed from my heart. So, you were alive after all. I couldn't help but exclaim loudly, and both Will, Emily's boyfriend, and his mother, looked at me in surprise. However, the most shocked of all was the man who stood there, Will's father. Though his hairstyle, beard, physique, and clothing had changed, there was no mistaking it for me, his wife. I'll need an explanation for this. From you. With anger in my voice, Will and his mother stared a hole through Steve, my husband. As it turned out, the father of Emily's boyfriend, as seen in the family photo she showed me, was none other than my husband, who had disappeared from my life before. While it was a relief to know he was alive, the idea of him being the father of my daughter's fiancé was beyond coincidence. Initially, I considered the possibility of a striking resemblance to someone else, but it seemed my eyes were correct. However, it appeared Steve was intending to play dumb.
Well, who are you? What's this about? You're being rude out of nowhere.
But his eyes were shifting, and beads of sweat streamed down his forehead. His evident discomfort undeniably confirmed his identity as my husband. It's useless trying to deny it. You can't fool me anymore. I confronted him, my tone growing stronger involuntarily.
May I have a little explanation, please?
Then, Will's mom, Beth, who had been bewildered until then, opened her mouth, seemingly unable to bear the situation any longer. Though she seemed shocked and struggling to grasp the situation, her calm inquiry revealed her professionalism as the president of a major talent agency. After taking a deep breath to calm myself, I looked her straight in the eye and pulled out some documents from my bag. Steve and I are married, and this is the proof. From there, I disclosed everything about his relationship with me to Will and Beth. On the day Emily showed me the family photo of her fiancé, she seemed suspicious of my reaction. So, I finally told her the truth about her father for the first time. I explained about the message hinting at suicide he sent on the day of our daughter's birth, the uncertainty about whether he was alive or dead, and how the man in the photo looked identical to him. After hearing everything from me, Emily proposed hiring a detective with her own money because she couldn't marry someone with the same father as herself. And after waiting for a week, the investigation results matched the time when my husband disappeared with the time he started living with Beth. With plenty of other evidence, it was confirmed that Will's father was indeed Steve. Beth had been staring at the report from the detective agency with Will for a while, but suddenly, she looked up.
Indeed. I was opposed to marrying him officially, and this seems to be the reason.
She said, glaring at Steve with anger in her eyes.
I met him when my son was 2 years old. Will is his stepson.
Then, Beth explained to us how she came to live with him. According to her, she had recently lost her husband in an accident and was working hard while taking care of the young Will. She happened to meet Steve, who was kind to her. Since Will is a little older than Emily, he probably started cheating on her before my pregnancy became known, at the point when his behavior became suspicious.
Of course, I heard he was single. So, we had something like a common-law marriage.
Beth quietly expressed her anger, glaring at Steve. It seemed my husband refused to marry officially because of his complicated family. Who was he to abandon his wife and child, then comfortably move in with another family? Then, at the next moment, perhaps realizing he couldn't keep lying anymore, Steve sighed heavily.
It's enough. Shut up. I couldn't live with you, always restricting my spending.
Of course, you're Steve after all. You disappeared out of nowhere, and then you end up in a nice position, don't you, Dot?
Yeah, that's right. I could have been the husband of a president and the father of a famous actor. Damn it, but you had to ruin it.
Then, he began to speak as if he had broken a dam, revealing everything about what had happened. Steve, who was reckless with money, was indeed unhappy with me managing the finances. And when he found out by chance that Beth was wealthy, he decided to switch immediately. He didn't want to pay alimony or child support, so he chose pretending suicide instead of divorce. He planned to settle everything while I was unable to move due to childbirth. Perhaps he had been contemplating this plan even before my pregnancy, hence his lack of concern. The increase in branded items was probably due to Beth buying them for him.
To be safe, I changed my appearance through weight loss and a makeover, and as a house husband, I spent most of my time indoors so the police wouldn't catch me.
His selfish excuses made anger bubble up from the depths of my being. For 25 years since my husband disappeared, there hadn't been a single day when I didn't think about Steve. I felt guilty for having pursued him. Although I couldn't do anything for him anymore, I had resolved to carry this regret with me for the rest of my life. However, when the truth came out, it turned out that all of it, the message from Steve, the shoes on the cliff, was all a lie to deceive me. While I was thinking about Steve, he had already abandoned me and our daughter and was living a luxurious life with another family. And I wasn't the only one who was angry with him.
I'm disappointed in you. I had a debt of gratitude to repay, but I didn't think you were such a person.
Beth's cold words were followed by Will's.
You barely did anything around the house anyway.
And he looked at Steve with disdain. Especially for Will, Steve was someone who hurt both his mother and his girlfriend. Perhaps, he couldn't forgive him so easily. And I felt the same way. This will be in the tabloids tomorrow. I delivered the final blow to Steve, who was faltering and glared with anger by everyone in the room.
What? Tabloids?
Will may be a famous actor, but Emily, the daughter you abandoned, is also a famous actress. As I spoke, Steve, who had turned blue, was quietly being stared at by his daughter next to him. After discussions with the agency, Emily decided to publicly announce her marriage to her boyfriend. At that time, she also explained about this unbelievable series of events. It seems the article will be published tomorrow. You won't be able to show your face in public anymore. Even though the marriage of a successful actor and actress was already big news, if the father was involved in such an incident, the media wouldn't stay silent. Perhaps from now on, Steve would have no privacy left.
Of course, you'll have to leave our house.
No, I don't want to. Please, reconsider. What am I supposed to do from now on?
Perhaps realizing how frightening the situation had become, Steve clung embarrassingly to me and Beth. Seeing his pitiful state, I felt as though I had been released from a curse that had haunted me for years. It took time, but I no longer needed to worry about my husband who had disappeared. I don't know. Maybe you can go and live with another family? Beth, Emily, Will, and I looked at each other, and leaving Steve behind, we left the place, planning to have another calm meeting somewhere else. Later, after 25 years, I divorced my husband. Since the announcement of my daughter's engagement, Steve has been quickly identified by her and Will's fans. Now he's being chased by tabloids and can't walk around town. Even though he hadn't been working for many years, finding a new job seems unlikely for a while. Being evicted from the house he lived in and unable to return to his parents' house, he's currently wandering the streets. On the other hand, Emily and Will got married. While being blessed by society, they also received sympathy for their father's situation, which actually increased their work opportunities. Now, I can live with a clear and cheerful heart. I plan to watch over their success and slowly enjoy this happy time. How was this video? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Well then, let's meet again in the next video.